Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be about rebuilding a Cayman S. This Porsche is a 2006 model and it does need to be inspected after you repair it. So we've got the call that it's ready to be picked up, so we're going to go pick it up and bring it back to the shop. So let's go. Here we go. Alright, so we got the Cayman put up on the frame machine. We're going to get it clamped down and start pulling on it. Here we go. Alright, so now we're going to pull the interior out of the frunk of the vehicle. I call it the frunk because it's a trunk, but it's in the front of the car. I guess that's what you're supposed to call it. It's what I call it. So we're going to pull the interior out of the frunk. Alright, so what we're trying to accomplish is to get this area pulled out to where the fender fits and everything lines up. So we've got a used bumper cover for this Cayman, and we've got to get it ready to paint. And what that's going to consist of is a few things. Let me show you. First off, we've got to get all these trim pieces off so that we don't have to tape them up. Like this pocket here, these grills. When we do that, we flip them over and just push the little things in. And then we have the repair for there, and it's just chewed up on the edges here. And this thing had a clear bra on it, so it's got a lot of glue. We got to get the glue off. And we're going to start on that. We'll flip this thing over and I'll show you what I'm talking about on the clips. Alright, so these are the little clips. You have to push them in. Push in the little catch and it pops them loose. Once you push it in, you can pop the piece off. Just like that. Alright, so I have to paint this red. I've got to make it black. And the black plastic piece has to be separated from the red piece so that I don't have to tape it up. And these, you can see that there, little part has to be pushed out of the black piece. Kind of a pain in the butt, but it's still better than taping it up. Makes a nicer job. Alright, so on the center piece here, you can see this little clip. You just want to push it down in there and turn it, and it pops it right out. You keep doing that on all of them. It should just pop loose like that. Lift it up and get these. Alright, so once you get them all popped off, this piece just comes right off. It's got a wire here. Pull the wire out of this little loom. And you get the pocket out. The side grills are going to be the same way. Just see here. Just want to put this pop that loose. We got a bulge right here, protruding. Looks like maybe they had a tow hook on there and it put an indentation into the bumper. So we have to actually use a heat gun, get this plastic good and warm, and we can push it back down into shape. Alright, so getting this glue off, basically just going to use a solvent, lacquer thinner. Got to be careful with the lacquer thinner not to let it get too wet because it will blister up the paint. More or less just softening up the glue, and you can take a Bondo spreader and scrape it off. Alright, so you can see here we got a couple low spots right here and right here. I'm going to put some heat on this bumper and try to get those to relax a little bit and come back out. And we'll do that right now. So we got the heat on there. And you notice I'm wearing gloves because the plastic's pretty hot. But you can wear gloves and you can manipulate the plastic. Help it wants to go back to its normal shape. If you put heat on it, these plastic bumpers have a memory to a point. And when you're heating it up, you want to heat up, like the dent was here and here, you want to heat up a larger area, a much larger area than the actual dent itself, so it'll all just kind of relax and go back into shape. As you can see, there's still a little bit of dent there, but nowhere near as much as there used to be. And I'm still massaging on it a little bit while it's cooling down. Alright, so the next step we're going to sand this bumper with is 180 grit. 180 grit DA paper, and this is a DA here, and what the DA is a dual action sander. It's basically spins this direction, and it's also orbital. So maybe it's an orbital sander basically, and it's pneumatic, it runs off of air. So we'll get this thing sanded, and what I like to do is when I sand the whole thing, the main reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to prime the whole bumper, and I don't like to prime over anything rougher than 180. So we're going to 180 the whole bumper, get all the rock chips out, because these used front bumpers are typically peppered with rock chips. So we're going to sand all those smooth, get everything ready for primer. Any low spots, we're going to get some filler in them and get them ready to paint. So that's the next step. We're going to get this thing sanded. I'm going to do that now. Alright, so the glue's off. It's sanded down with 180. I'm going to take the old piece of 180 DA. I'm going to fold it in half like so. And I'm going to go over all my edges that I couldn't get with the DA. Alright guys, so the next step, I'm going to get this thing blown off. And all the low-lying areas, I'm going to wipe them with a filler. Alright, so I got the filler on the panel. This is the cream harder that it uses. For that much filler, just put about that much hardener in it. If you put too much hardener in it, it dries too fast. If you put not enough, it doesn't dry fast enough. So once you've done that, once I start folding this and mixing it all together, then I'm going to have to get it on the part pretty fast, because it is pretty warm right here today and it will dry fairly fast. So I'm going to get this mixed up and I'm going to put it on the bumper. So I'm not sure if it showed up on the time lapse, but if you'll notice, I don't have anything on the panel now, but when I was mixing, you can stir it, but you want to fold it and press it, because when you stir it, what it does is it creates air bubbles inside the filler, and it makes pinholes when you sand it. So if you will mix it up good and then start folding it on itself and then smearing it out, pressing it out, it basically gets all the air bubbles out, air pockets and air bubbles out of the filler, so it prevents pinholes. So we're going to let that filler dry, and once it dries, I'm going to block it with 80 grit on a block here. And when you're blocking on a plastic bumper and you're putting filler on it, stay on the filler. Don't sand all willy-nilly, all crazy on the plastic bumper, because 80 grit will, if you get through the paint, it will hair up the plastic bumper. And what I mean by hair up, it just makes little fibers stand up, and they're pretty much impossible to get rid of. You have to start sanding with wet sanding with 600 and stuff to try to make them go away, and they're almost impossible to prime out. So if you can minimize that, that's why I didn't sand the bumper with 80 to start with. That's another reason why I like to use the 180. But when you're blocking with the 80, just stay on the filler as best you can, on the putty. So the putty should be dry here in a little bit, and we're going to get sanding on it. So I got the 80 grit done. Basically get a general shape on the bumper. Next step would be 180 grit. And what I'm doing with the 180 grit is finish sanding it before primer, getting the 80 grit scratches out. And I was careful not to get too much into the plastic itself with the 80. You don't have to be so careful with the 180. You can really go to town, get it straight as you can get it with the 180. So we're gonna do that now. Alright guys, if you notice when I'm block sanding, I'm basically going in an X pattern, and what I mean by X pattern is this would be one way and this would be the other way, making an X with the scratches. And what I'm doing with that is it basically makes it that sands better, it doesn't clog the paper as bad, and it makes it straighter. So that's what, if you notice me sanding, that's why I'm sanding like that. One other thing you might have noticed when I'm sanding, I'll take my hand and just rub it across the panel, like so. What I'm doing when I'm doing that is I'm feeling for high or low spots. After you've done this a while, you can actually you can feel imperfections in the filler and in the panel. And when you've got it sanded, you can't see shiny or low spots, and you can't shine a light on it and see a high or low spot, so you have to be able to feel it. It's actually one of the things that took me the longest to learn when I was doing this, was rubbing your hand across it and telling what's high and what's not. Alright, so the filler's all sanded. The next step will be taking a red Scotch-Brite, going over all your edges and making sure that there is no shiny, because you don't want to prime over any shiny unsanded areas. Basically, I go over the whole panel again just to verify that everything is scuffed good. Pearls of wisdom from an old dirty body man.
An apple a day will keep anyone away if you throw it hard enough.
Alright, so it looks like that's all the time we're going to have for this video. I'm explaining my processes a little bit more in detail. I had a comment on one of my last videos that said they appreciated the fact that I did that, so I'm going to try to do that more in some of my videos, explaining the processes a little bit more in detail. Although that eats up time on the video, and instead of having a big long video for a vehicle repair, I'll probably just make it up into smaller bits, a little bit easier to swallow that way, so nobody wants to sit through a long video. I know I don't, but if you do enjoy the video, don't forget the like button and the subscribe button, like button and the subscribe button. Words are hard. Also, the next video that's coming up, stay tuned for it, because it'll be us priming the bumper and preparing the bumper for paint, and also refinishing the bumper and the reassembly of the vehicle. So stay tuned for that. And again, thanks to you guys for watching, and see you guys on the next one. See ya! After we get it scuffed with the gray, not gray, it's red. Really? About rebuilding a Boxster. No, it's not a Boxster. It's a 1990 not. It's a 2006.